Tuatahi I ki ngā mana whenua tēnā koutou, koutou ngā rangatira o a pōpō, tēnei timihi atu ki a koutou. Morena, everybody. I know what you're probably thinking, as tāmoko is not even real. Or you might be thinking, his shoes are pretty cool. Well, I can tell you that I didn't always think that. The day after I bought these shoes, I walked about 400 meters from my house, and I couldn't walk a step further. My feet were all blistered, I had bleeding heels, and I couldn't even take them back. So I decided that I'd wear them a little bit every day and make sure that they were a bit more bearable, a little bit more comfortable. And I did that, and that happened. And the lesson that I learned from that was that to get to easy, we actually have to go through hard. And I think this is a lesson that applies to a lot of things, a lot of journeys that we go through, a lot of sort of outcomes that are worth achieving or talents that are worth acquiring. To get to easy, we've got to go through hard. We heard a lot of interesting stories yesterday about going through hard and having to continue to go through hard. And if I reflect on my own journey, I've also had a little bit of that as well. 8 years ago, I left this beautiful community in the far north to come here to this concrete jungle and sit in the law library for 8 to 12 hours a day. 5 years ago, I was still in that law library. And I'd taken up a part-time job at the ice house where I was paid less than $10 an hour, but I was learning from some of the best entrepreneurs and business leaders in the country. 4 years ago, I dropped out of uni. But I did that because I wanted to set aside my university studies and pick up the tools of innovation and entrepreneurship to help empower Maori leaders to grow world-class organizations. 2 years ago, I was made redundant from that role when the Ice House restructured. But we saw that more as an opportunity, a big break, a chance to own that vision ourselves and set up Te Whare Hukahuka, where we could determine the strategy, where we could determine the teams that we needed, the partners that we needed to actually make that dream come true. Last year, we didn't take a paycheck because we were so invested in making sure that we could achieve that dream. And that enabled us to go from 0 to Forbes in 4 years. And so today I want to share a little bit more about that journey and some of the things that I think we can each do practically in our own lives and in our own organizations to help us going through hard. And so I've done a little bit of research over the last few years around some of the key leaders in a number of different fields, change makers, people across business, social enterprise, philosophy, the arts, the sciences. And what I've found is a lot of their lessons, their learnings, their key tips and tricks for us are actually very similar. They say sort of the same things in different words. And even yesterday, a number of the key themes were coming through. And so what I've done is I've consolidated all these ideas down into sort of one model, which I call the opportunity snowball, which is a book that I'm writing about. And essentially the opportunity snowball suggests that we can actually create virtuous and ever-increasing cycles of growth and opportunity, that we can manifest it. And so when we think about these things, the thing I like about the opportunity snowball is that what it does is it gives us a bit of focus. So it says, if we just did these 4 things really well, actually we'd be able to manifest more success. And typically we tend to think of these things as sort of disconnected, but I actually think they're quite interrelated and they reinforce one another. So if we just look at each of those as we go around, the first is this concept of finding your why, tapping into something that drives you, your vision, your mission, your passions, the thing that you're here on this earth to do. And once we find that, and we can connect with people and champions who are also believing that same thing, who also want to help us achieve that, and who can support us on that journey as we're going through hard, and who can support us to make steps to actually do that, it's very easy to start to make progress. Little steps of progress, and just beginning is always the hardest. But once we take small steps, it's those millimeters and millimeters that become meters, and meters that become miles and miles, and that is really how we make progress towards achieving our goals. And then once we're doing that and we're learning a whole range of things, we can look and go, what is actually working and what's not working? We can sort of measure and determine what do we need to do more of that's going to help us get to our why? Or what else do we need to do that's going to help us get there? And that helps us also to go, actually, is this my why, or is it something just slightly over here? Which helps us get there faster. And once we're there, we can attract towards us more people who we can learn from, who we can join with, more tribe, more community, which gives us more resource to make smaller steps of progress towards our why, which enables us to track new things, figure out what's working, what's not working, and I believe that this cycle continues. And so for the duration of this talk, I want to talk a little bit more about this concept of finding your why, really tapping into this. And Dan mentioned it yesterday in his talk. And the reason I want to do this is because as young people, really this is the first place to start. And often this is the hardest place to start. And so half of us in the audience are probably going, well, I'm still trying to find my why. I still don't really know what that thing is for me. And the other half might be going, I'm just passionate about so many things. It's very hard to know which one or two I should focus on. And so there's a couple of tools that I've used and I've found quite useful to actually help us refine that and really tap into that thing. The first is this concept of just literally write everything down that you're interested in. All the things that you're passionate about, that motivate you, things you want to contribute to, get it all down on paper. And once you've done that, circle a couple of key things that really resonate with you. And what I've found is when you do that, the key thing's then to look at what's at the nexus of these 3 or 4 things. What activity could you do that combines multiple passions and do that? Now, I'm not saying that every passion is always going to be connected to another one, or that every activity is going to sit in the middle, but I'm definitely saying there will be activities that do. And so in Whare Hukahuka, we've been able to combine our passions for innovation and entrepreneurship and community development and education and Maori culture and leadership and bring all that together to create training programs to empower Maori leaders to grow world-class enterprises. A second really useful tool is actually to tap into what the world needs. And one way to do that is by looking at the UN Sustainability Development Goals, because this helps us to focus and go, okay, of these 17 things that research suggests are really important to be doing in the world in order to make this world a better place to live, what are the 2 or 3 that I really resonate with, that I can connect with, that I'd like to contribute towards? And once we learn more about that and learn more about what are problems, what are the solutions, what local initiatives exist in my community, in my country that I could contribute to, that I could join, that I could start, that's also a really useful tool. And extra points to the people who find these goals outside on the big boards. And then the third is to ask ourselves these reflective questions. Questions like, what would I do with my life if money were no object? Questions like, what's the legacy that I want to leave when only the memory of me remains? And when we ask these questions, we are able to tap into the things that really we do get passionate about, the things that bring us to life. And so if we just drill into these questions a little bit more, I'll sort of answer them in my own context for you. And so if I think about my why and I look inside my own family, my why is about making sure that my beautiful Pākehā cousins and my beautiful Maori cousins have the same opportunities in life. Because the reality is that they don't. The reality is that my Maori cousins are statistically worse off than my Pākehā cousins. Maori are still at the bottom of 80% of all wellbeing indicators that we use. And Celine sort of touched on this yesterday when she talked about her journey in Murupara. And even if I look around the room and I see maybe 5, maybe 10% Maori faces, when we know that 25% of New Zealand's youth are Maori, we know there's still a disconnect. And so part of my why and part of the why of Te Whare Hukahuka is to empower Maori leaders and young Maori leaders to command this space, to step up into leadership roles and be part of actually growing Indigenous organizations that exist to improve our communities. A second part of my why is about proving that the 20th century model that business is just about growing profits is not relevant in the 21st century. And in fact, that we can do a lot better. And we've got a whole generation of young people who believe the same thing. Every year, Deloitte releases a survey called the Millennial Survey. They go out and they talk to about 8,000 young people and find out what really matters to them in terms of their relationship with their businesses. And what they've found is that more than 3/4 of young people believe the purpose of an organization is important to them around whether they choose to work there or not. That almost half of young people believe the purpose of business is to improve our society or protect our environment. And that really shows to me that as a generation, we're expecting more of business in the 21st century. And there are some brilliant examples out there of businesses who are doing that, who are proving that it's not just a matter of profits or impact, you can actually do both. And in fact, one example up there, Eat My Lunch, this week was named in the Deloitte's list of fastest 50 growing businesses in New Zealand. And so to take that a step further, I sort of think that we're still in a time where this concept of corporate social responsibility and this concept of even philanthropy suggests we should make a whole lot of money and then with that money do the good that we can afford. But I reckon there's a different model, a better model, which is first to think about the good that we want to do, the change that we want to make, the initiatives that we want to run, and then understand what resources it's going to take to do that, what money we're going to need to do that, and then build a business model that enables us to do that. And I reckon that this is a return to an indigenous set of values, an indigenous way of doing things where we prioritize our communities and our environment above making money. So while this might seem like a small tweak, actually I think it's a fundamental shift in the mindset around the role that money plays in creating social outcomes. So very briefly, I just want to give an overview of how we translate that why into our how at Te Whare Hukahuka. This is our theory of change. So our activity is to empower Maori leaders, to build confidence, to build capability, to lift aspirations, and to then also help create a market, connecting projects and ideas with funders, with partners, with networks and teams. Once we do that, we create stronger organizations that at their very core exist to improve the well-being of our communities. And once they're successful and sustainable and profitable, what we're finding is this brings more pride to these communities. It creates more employment, more social outcomes, cultural outcomes, environmental outcomes. And when we do this at scale, we believe that we'll create a new benchmark of success, a new level of normal around what it means to be Māori and successful, and create a whole range of new opportunities for Māori growth. And so I can tell you that 2 weeks of blistered feet was absolutely worth 2 years of comfortable walking. And in fact, that all those hard times that we went through in Te Whare Hukahuka were absolutely worth it when I walk into a room and I see Māori leaders aspiring, thinking strategically, setting really clear outcomes, and stepping up. And when I hear about their growth stories and their success stories. And we've brought a group of 20 young Māori here today to be part of this mission. And so while we're all going to take something different away from festival, hopefully there's something really practical that we can latch onto, that we can do tomorrow, that will redefine the rest of our lives. And so I challenge you to think about those 1 or 2 key steps of progress that you can make. Here are two potential ideas for you anyway. The first is, if you resonated with this concept of the opportunity snowball, then you can request a copy of it. It's still in draft form, but when it's released, I'll be able to send it out to you. You've just got to email that address there, opportunitysnowball@gmail.com. I'm very keen on any feedback around it as well. The second is, if you resonated with the why of Te Whare Hukahuka, and you're in touch with young Māori leaders who you believe could step up and be our next generation of leaders, then let them know about our organization. Let them know that we run a program for young Māori leaders that we're launching again next year, and they can check it out on our website at twh.co.nz. So all the best for the rest of festival, all the best for finding your why and finding your champions, making small steps of progress and measuring what works and doesn't work. And all the best for our journeys through hard. Ka tira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.